The Baltimore Ravens pick up a 23-10 win over the Tennessee Titans in week 1 of the 2022 preseason. We break down the game, look at what's next for the Ravens and more next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here, another episode of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostraker, your host, here with you. Of course, we're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. That includes on YouTube, and we are your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. And we're back here recapping the Ravens week 1 of the 2022 preseason. Now, they came out with a 23-10 win over the Tennessee Titans. So it is a Victory Friday here on the show. Purple Friday, too. We can do both Victory Friday and Purple Friday. We're going to be breaking down the entire thing here today, talking about this Ravens team again, extending their record-setting preseason win streak to 21 games, and they did it without the majority of their starters in the game. Players like Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, I mean, pretty much literally their entire starting unit did not play in this game. A lot of veterans did not play. So, again, a very impressive win. Lots of guys stepping up, and how we're going to do this is in the first segment. We're going to dive into the offensive performance, talking about players that stepped up and just what the offense was able to do against Tennessee. In the second segment, we'll be doing the defense, so same type of deal. And then in the final segment, we'll just look ahead to what's next for the Ravens, maybe some additions they should or even at this point need to make in talking about that and just looking ahead for this team. So there's a ton to talk about here today. I brought out the palm tree shirt for today. It's a celebration. The Ravens winning their first game of the 2022 preseason. We'll get to the regular season in a couple weeks here. But also the second reason I brought out the palm tree shirt for a celebration today is that today actually marks my 3 years as the host of this show and the producer of this show. And it's really humbling to look back on this whole thing, considering just what it started out as, what I started out as in this business, and just how the show has grown, how I have grown. And I just can't thank everybody enough, whether this is your first show listening to me today, whether you've been here for all 785 consecutive episodes that I put out here. Yes, today is number 785 for me. You know, I want to thank everybody at the network for believing in me, all the guests I've had on, my friends, family, loved ones. You know, it's been a long journey here, and I'm excited to continue to grow this show, grow the following. And I just want to thank everybody for the immeasurable support that I've gotten. It's been incredible, and I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart and thank everybody who's been along on this journey with me. But we have a ton of Ravens content to dive into today on this number 785 on my 3-year anniversary here of hosting this show. If you heard this on YouTube, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. You know, we're going for 3,000 subs. We're on a great streak here of growing this community on YouTube. It's amazing. So if you want to see the palm tree shirt with the palm tree background, nice little aesthetic going over here, be sure to subscribe and put out the other Ravens content 5 days per week. Also, if you hear this in audio form, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow us, turn notifications on. And if you're here with us anywhere you're listening to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, thank you. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter at CashRicker34 and the Locked On Ravens account at Locked On Ravens. So let's now dive into the Ravens content. Let's now talk about the Ravens and their 23-10 victory. And let's start with the offense. Now, again, Lamar Jackson did not play in this game. So from a quarterback perspective, Tyler Huntley got the start, played for the entire first half, and actually had a pretty quietly good performance in this game. Finished 16 of 18 for 109 yards, had one touchdown. I think they changed it. I think it was 110. Then the official box score must have put it at 109. But yeah, he had a touchdown. That touchdown pass he had to Shamar Bridges. So the Ravens, they were able to move the ball decently effectively overall. On the day, they totaled 389 total yards. They converted on 8 of 17 third down. So that's a pretty good number. That's right around 50%, just under 50% of their third down conversions. They had a total of 19 first downs compared to Tennessee's 15, and also 259 passing yards, 130 rushing yards, average 4.2 yards per carry. Not terrible whatsoever, 6.8 yards per pass. Also, we talk about how the Ravens hold the ball, and that's kind of their bread and butter, right? They hold the ball, they run the clock down. When everybody's healthy, they do that really well. Well, they held the ball in this game for 35 minutes 32 seconds compared to Tennessee's 24-28. And it was a game really, I mean, at the half, it was 14-10 Baltimore, but then the Ravens end up kind of pulling away in the second half and, some field goals doing that, outscored the Titans 9-0 in the second half. So credit to the defense. We'll get to those guys in the second segment. But I do want to say that for Huntley, he was impressive overall. I will say that the deep ball accuracy, we saw that one to, I believe it was Benjamin Victor, that was like just a little overthrown, and part of the criticisms of Huntley last year, and I've certainly had those criticisms, is the fact that his deep ball accuracy needed to improve. So again, mixed results overall, but again, finishing 16 of 18 is nothing to scoff at. And then you have Anthony Brown, who came in after and finished 10 of 15 for 117 yards. And he looked impressive. I think that he, if we're talking about maybe a third quarterback competition between Anthony Brown and Brett Hundley, I think Anthony Brown has the lead over that based off of this one preseason game. Hundley did finish 2 of 2 for 42 yards, had a fumble that really wasn't a fumble. I think the refs just wanted to get out of there. It was with like a minute left, and they said, you know what, we're done. We're getting out. But I do think that Anthony Brown, he impressed me a little more than I thought he would. I was impressed with him in his ability to move around, deliver footballs in really nice places. And so for me, I think that he was a very big winner in this game. Looking at the ground game, you had Nate McCrary leading this team with 5 carries for 31 yards, 6.2 yards per carry. Yeah, then Mike Davis with 5 for 22 and his first touchdown in the Ravens uniform. So a big welcome to Baltimore. Mike Davis for the Ravens there, as he scored and got to the edge and got in the end zone. So that was good. Tyler Beatty, 6 for 19. I mean, he was all right. I know that the lanes were kind of clogged up when he was running overall. So not putting too much stock into that performance for me personally. Averaged 3.2 yards per carry, so hopefully an improved yards per carry average coming in the next game. Yeah, Tyler Huntley with 3 for 17, 5.7 yards per carry. Corey Clement, 4 for 17, 4.3. Then Anthony Browning at 2 for 14. Justice Hill, 3 for 11. But he had a couple runs that were called back, honestly. He impressed me. He was playing with some burst, had a couple of nice blitz pickups in pass protection. He impressed me overall. I think he was a big winner on the night. And if those plays weren't called back, we'll talk about the player who had those plays called back in a couple minutes. I think that, again, the box score stats would have been much better. So 3 for 17 might not look amazing for Justice, or 3 for 11, might not look amazing for Justice Hill, but it was a lot better than that performance overall. Then you have Brett Hundley 2 for 3, and then Tylan Wallace 1 for -4. And speaking of Tylan Wallace and these Baltimore receivers, Wallace left the game with a knee injury. John Harbaugh clarifying with the media after the game that it's a minor knee sprain. Not really sure how long he'll be out for. You also have him clarifying on James Prochet's injury that it's a soft tissue thing. He'll be out for around 1 to 2 weeks. So the Ravens are getting thin at wide receiver, and we've seen the Ravens have all 4 of their core 4 guys miss some time now: Bateman, Duvernay, Prochet, and Wallace. So we'll talk about the receiver position and just what's going on there in the final segment. But receivers who did play, make an impact in this game. What a day for Shamar Bridges. 4 for 62 and a touchdown, 15.5 yards per catch. And the contested big-bodied receiver that we've been talking about for a very long time here on this show as the profile of the receiver that the Ravens need. And Bridges going up, making those contested catches, had a really nice touchdown on a fade. And later in the game, had a nice pass where he and Anthony Brown connected. And those are the types of plays that I think the Ravens were lacking a little bit of and have been lacking for these last couple of seasons, where I think, look, you have a lot of different players with a lot of different skill sets, but a skill set that you don't necessarily have on the roster right now, well, on the final 53, man, if you're not going to keep any undrafted guys, is that big body guy. So Shamar Bridges is definitely helping out his case. You also had Makai Polk leading this team with interceptions with 6. He had 43 yards, so 7.2 yards per reception. He had 8 targets, though, led this team with 8 targets. Definitely it seemed like a trusted target of both Tyler Huntley and Anthony Brown, so good for him. But you had Isaiah Likely. I mean, one of the biggest winners. I think honestly the 2 biggest winners on the day were Shamar Bridges and Isaiah Likely. Likely showed why he was considered a steal by many. Just unbelievable. The first catch he had shook a Titans defender out of his shoes, like scrambled this guy. It was very impressive. And I was like, oh, okay. Like Tyler Huntley is kind of like that. But then he drooped out like 3 more guys, got the first down, and it was impressive. Then he caught another ball, that contested catch profile, caught a very impressive contested catch. Overall had 4 receptions on the day for 44 yards, but he's not a complete stock up guy because his blocking left a little bit to be desired. Those Justice Hill plays I was talking about, Isaiah Likely had some holes in there that called some of those plays back. And it was unfortunate because, again, without those holds, you had Justice Hill breaking a couple of big runs. So again, you had Isaiah likely not be the only guy who held on this Ravens offense. He wasn't the only guy who committed a penalty on the Ravens. But again, the holding stuff does have to get cleaned up. It did negate a couple of big plays. But overall, I think likely is a very big winner. Other than that, you had Riley Webb connecting on a 34-yard pass with Brett Hundley late in the game. Benjamin Victor, 4 for 30. Jalen Moore, 2 for 15. Josh Oliver, 2 for 14. Tyler Beatty, 1 for 9. Devin Williams, 1 for 8. Ben Mason, 2 for 6. Tyler Wallace, 1 for 3. And then Corey Clement had a target but not a reception. So, yeah, I think it was overall a very solid day for these receivers. I think that Shamar Bridges, after one preseason game, probably has the hold on that number 5 spot. Now, the preseason is not the only thing that goes into that. But, again, it's hard to not overlook this performance and say, well, just because he did that in the preseason doesn't mean he's in the lead. I think he's in the lead. I think Jalen Moore is probably the number 6 guy. You have Makai Polk probably there at number 7. I mean, it's unfortunate for guys like Slade Bold and Bailey Gaither who weren't able to play in this game, weren't able to help their cause. But yeah, I think that if you're looking at 5 through 7 for me, wide receiver wise, my order would be Shamar Bridges, then you have Jalen Moore, then you have Makai Polk. So those guys all very impressive. And then I think also offensive line wise, you saw a lot of Daniel Falele, who had a couple of really nice reps. You saw Ben Cleveland in there a lot, Tyree Phillips, Tristan Colon, Patrick McCary played in this game, obviously with Tyler Linderbaum out. So you had some positives in there. Not a perfect day, but I think a day where the coaching staff will have a lot of film to review, and we'll get into how that line performed throughout the rest of the week here on this show. But overall, I think a very solid day for the offense, especially for the pass catchers. I think highlighting a couple of really big skill set needs the Ravens have and what now they have on the roster, I think it was a very positive day for the offense overall. But we'll head into our first break here, though, on Locked On Ravens. Still a ton to talk about. When we get back, we'll be diving into the defensive side of the ball in that 23-10 Ravens victory against the Tennessee Titans. So be sure to stay tuned. Still a ton to talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Bet Online. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting news. You can find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live and game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here. Our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you here on this Victory Friday / Purple Friday. And again, thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Again, we put out daily Ravens content 5 days per week on YouTube and in audio form as well. So if you're listening in audio form, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to follow along with us there. But yeah, defense time. The Ravens overall is a defensive unit. Let's start off with the team stats first. We'll do that. The Ravens allowed 299 total yards to the Tennessee Titans, 5 of 12 allowed on third down. So not a bad day for the defense, definitely overall. And again, that shutout in the second half, very encouraging. Had a lot of guys step up. 15 first downs for the Titans compared to those Ravens. 19 first downs. You holding the Titans to 5.3 yards per pass, 4.7 yards per carry, which, maybe you'd like to see that go down a little bit, but, they got the win, so it's fine. It's the preseason. But I think for the Ravens, the thing that sticks out to me is the turnovers. You had 3 turnovers for this Ravens team, one coming on a forced fumble by Malik Harrison, Kyle Hamilton covering that fumble. Then he had 2 interceptions, one by Darryl Worley, very, very recently signed Darryl Worley, and the other coming from Gino Stone on a tip ball from Josh Ross. And the turnover thing stands out to me because last year the Ravens could not generate turnovers. They had 15 total last year, which was tied for 29th out of 32 in the NFL. And look, to be completely fair, they were missing guys like Marcus Peters, missing Marlin Humphrey for the back half of the season, Deshaun Elliott, etc. And look, their defense was decimated by injuries. Their whole team was. But to have this team generate 3 turnovers in last night's game, to see that, it doesn't just have to be the starters that go out there and make these plays. I think Gino Stone really helped out his case overall. Malik Harrison, I think, had more positives than negatives. We'll get into those guys in a couple minutes. But the turnovers are so huge for me because they can literally swing the course of a game. I'll go back to the 2020 season, that Indianapolis game. And I think for the people who remember what I'm talking about and where I'm going with this, that game was a game that looked like the Ravens were going to lose it and lose it pretty badly. They couldn't move the ball on the Colts defense. The Colts defense was shutting them down. And the Colts offense was able to do a little something against the Ravens, move the ball a little bit. But then you had a couple of turnovers in there. You had The one that I'm going to talk about is the forced fumble by Marcus Peters on Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor kind of went to the right sideline. Marcus Peters punches that ball out, and you have Chuck Clark pick up the ball, run it back. He hurdles over Phillip Rivers, who's like falling down. He's like, oh no, and he returns it for a touchdown. That swings the momentum of that game. You also have Marcus Peters with an interception where he did take 2 steps, and a lot of people don't think he did, but the tape is there. He did, and he had to control the ball the whole way down. So turnovers are a big key point that I think are huge for the Ravens this year. And to have them start off with 3 in the preseason, I think it sets a tone. It sets a precedent that, look, they understand that the turnover thing was not great last year. So to see that happen was awesome. And I'm really glad that they were able to get their hands on the football, get the football out. And we kind of see and I talked about this a bit last year and a couple of years ago too, the Marlin Humphrey effect is real. It is real where, we know Marlon Humphrey's fruit punch. He's one of the best at getting the football out, forcing the fumbles. But we see that translate over to Marcus Peters and translate over to all these other guys where now we see all these other players in this Ravens defense going for the football. And obviously, look, it's a technique in football. You use it all the time. It's not just a Marlon Humphrey thing. It's a fundamental thing. But I think it's kind of rubbing off on these players. Hey, don't go for the football. Make sure you can tackle, right? Make sure you can tackle. But hey, go for the football. See if you can try to force anything while also trying to bring the ball carrier down. I think it's an art that the Ravens are trying to perfect. And I hope that they're able to get back to that because, again, the turnover situation was not pretty last season. And I think all in all, it probably cost them a couple games when they just weren't able to get momentum back, force an offense to give them the ball in good field position. And so in that case, I think it did hurt a little bit. But when you're talking about overall standouts from this game on defense, Travis Jones was a guy that I was very impressed with, was in the backfield on a couple plays, had a sack as well. I think he's a player that, again, just like, how did he fall to the 3rd round? Like, how were the Ravens able to snag a player like Travis Jones? I will probably never know. We will probably never know, but I'm happy it happened. I'm happy it happened. And Travis Jones, he looked explosive, a player that I think is the preseason progressive we'll see more and more of. And I think when we're talking about the end of the regular season, we're going to see him have probably a decently big role overall, which I'm excited to see. I think another guy who stood out to me was Steven Means, getting some pressure in the backfield, had a sack as well. And the Ravens are going to need some outside linebacker help here with obviously Vince Beagle tearing his Achilles and just when is Tyus Bowser going to return? When is David Ojabo going to return? We don't know. So I think Steven Means is a veteran option and obviously showed some juice a little bit in last night's game. I was impressed with him. I think that he's a player that can do a lot of good things in the run game and as a pass rusher. So you want to have the pass rushing juice, and I think Steven Means definitely we saw that from him. I think Malik Harrison too. Now, there are very mixed reviews on Malik Harrison by a lot of people. Some people think he was a big winner. Other people think he's a big loser. I'm going to put him as a small winner, a small stock up guy, because I think the positives do outweigh the negatives from him. I mentioned that forced fumble, but he was everywhere. He was everywhere in that first quarter. Now, he did have a couple plays where he missed some tackles. He got stiff-armed a little bit towards like the second quarter, end of the first half-ish area. But again, I think what I saw in the first quarter does outweigh what I saw kind of towards the later part of that, because he was flying around, making plays. And nobody's perfect, so I'm not going to necessarily say, well, he missed a tackle. All the good stuff you done, it's done now. It's only that one negative play. I do want to highlight the positives, but I also want to highlight the negatives too, because I think it's good to be fair in these situations. But I think that, again, as a small stock up guy is fair from Malik Harrison, because I liked what I saw. I was talking throughout the entire past week and even on yesterday's show about how I was looking forward to seeing Malik Harrison. I wanted to see more from him, and I saw a lot. I saw a lot that was very encouraging from him, and I know there's been a lot of talk about Roquan Smith. I don't think, again, one small stock-up preseason game for Malik Harrison is going to determine whether the Ravens go after Roquan Smith or not, what their decision is there. But I was impressed with him overall. Not as impressed with the tackling at the end of the half. The stiff arm was not pretty, but I think I was still – it was more than I was expecting, I would say, overall. I think another guy who I want to highlight is also Gino Stone, who was a player that, again, going into training camp, I had off my roster, or going into mini camp, I think I had him off my roster. Going into training camp, I had him on it. He is firmly on it right now. Gino Stone is a player that I think is really the best fit for that 5th safety spot, and we saw him make a bunch of plays, especially later in that game. I mentioned that interception, but he was flying all around, had a big hit in the backfield. he's experienced. He's in his third year now, that 2020 draft class. A player, like you're talking about these Ravens steals where it's like, where are the Ravens being able to get these guys like 2-3 rounds later? Gino Stone was supposed to be, according to a lot of people, like a 4th, 5th round guy. He was a 7th round pick, and the Ravens got him. They made a trade with the Vikings. They actually got both James Prochet and Gino Stone in that trade with the Vikings. They traded I believe it was a 6th for 2 7ths or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was something like that. And the Ravens, I think they made out very well in that deal. Stone is a player that, again, provides safety depth. And that is a position I think is the deepest, if not, just one of the deepest on their roster. So you have Kyle Hamilton, you have Chuck Clark, you have Marcus Williams, but then you have the other guys like Tony Jefferson and like Gino Stone. So very impressed there. Kyle Hamilton, I think, again, he had a pretty good debut. Wasn't perfect. He missed a couple tackles, but he had a play, and, the broadcast highlighted it where he covered so much ground to get Malik Willis out of bounds. It was honestly pretty impressive to see what he was able to do with that. Now, the missed tackles, again, you got to clean those up. The Ravens did struggle on that one Titans drive to tackle, and it was like, oh, man, like, here we go again. Is this what it's going to be? And then we saw the Kevon Seymour miscommunication. He's somebody who was a stock down guy for me. That play was just like, what is going on here? I don't think it was a totally terrible game from him, but that one play was like, what are you doing? Like, where are we going here? Miscommunication, something like that happening. So I know Tony Jefferson was kind of a little upset about it. It seemed from what I saw. So I think you just gotta work through those if you're Kevon Seymour. But I don't know. He was kind of a stock down guy for me. Another like small stock down guy was Jeremiah Moon, not because of his play, because he had the 15-yard roughing the passer penalty, and like the camera panned to John Harbaugh, and you could tell it was. John Harbaugh was pretty mad at that situation. And look, he's a guy who does, he's not happy with those penalties. And obviously, I think Moon did have a couple of nice plays on the night. But, those plays we have seen get people into John Harbaugh's doghouse before. Now, it is preseason. The Ravens want to see what they have. They need some outside linebacker help. I still think Moon is on my roster right now. I don't think that knocked him off. I don't think that the one play from him is like, oh, he's terrible. Like, all the way stock down. I just think it's a small stock down for me there. But again, I was impressed with the defense. I'm excited to see what they can do against Arizona in week 2 of the preseason. We'll talk about that game and also just what comes next for this Ravens team coming up here in our final segment. Though, again, the Ravens, a 23-10 victory over Tennessee, extending that preseason win streak to 21 games. So be sure to stay tuned for our final segment. We'll be right back here on Locked On Ravens. We're back here. Our final segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with you. And again, thank you for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us in audio form. But yeah, I mean, what's next for the Ravens? Well, I think we got to start with wide receiver. Wide receiver is the position to me where the Ravens, they might not want to, but they are entering very dangerous territory in terms of they might be forced to add a veteran wide receiver at this point. I have been very consistent in saying I still think the Ravens should add a veteran receiver. That has kind of dwindled a little bit because of the fact that there's not really a ton of needle-moving options. In fact, I'm not sure there is one at this point on the free agent market. Maybe there's a trade, maybe there's a cut-down day guy that can work for them. Right now in free agency, you're looking at Will Fuller, T.Y. Hilton, Odell Beckham Jr., Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley, some of those guys. Maybe those are players that can help you out. I think Will Fuller could definitely help you. I think T.Y. Hilton, he could help you. Emmanuel Sanders, same thing. Odell Beckham, again, depending on the injury, I don't know. I still am against that. Well, I shouldn't say against. I just think it wouldn't help until later in the year. Obviously, if he's able to come back, he would be able to help that room immensely. But that's a situation they have to figure out themselves if they want to just wait until November, December, January, whatever it may be for him. But you have James Prochet is going to be out for a week or two. Tylan Wallace, the knee sprain, we don't really know what that's going to be. Slade Bolden is missing time right now. Bailey Gaither's missing time right now. You've already seen Rashad Bateman miss time. You've seen Devin Duvernay miss time. It's thin. They're thin there. And you can say, well, they're going to get healthy. It's only a week or two. What if we get to the regular season here? And it's week 6 or something. And the Ravens, Devin Duvernay's out with something. Tylan Wallace is out with something. And you have other guys banged up and whatnot. You could have these guys on the practice squad who are ready to go. But if you're missing 2 of your top 4 guys or even 1 of your top 4 guys, you're starting to rely on these young players. And I'm not saying they can't do it, right? I'm not saying they can't. I don't want to have that be the message that comes across. But again, a veteran receiver would just add that extra element. I think you're looking at profiles. You have the speedsters like Will Fuller and T.Y. Hilton and whatnot. You can make a move there and still have a very decent wide receiver room. It's not going to be the best thing ever, right? It's not going to be obviously, all right, the Ravens signed Will Fuller. They're a top 5 wide receiver group now. It's not going to be that way. But I think that a veteran would help out a lot. I'm not saying that if they don't sign a veteran, they're going to be doomed. But that's where I am right now. And I think, again, if you're the Ravens, you have to at least seriously consider it because of just how thin you are with injuries right now. And maybe the thought of, well, what happens if this situation happens in the regular season and all of a sudden, you don't have this 8 deep wide receiver group because you're going to have to, obviously, the 53-man roster is a thing. So maybe you have 2 or 3 wideouts on the practice squad. But I don't know. We'll see what they do there. I still think they should bring in somebody. There are potential trade targets. I know Darius Slayton's been mentioned as a player for a long time, and maybe like a Chuck Clark swap or something. I don't know what it would be in order to get a guy like that, but maybe there is a guy on cut down day. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that you look at that just signed Julio Jones. They brought in Russell Gage. Chris Godwin's working his way back. Mike Evans is there as well. So what's the availability on a guy like Tyler Johnson or a guy like Scotty Miller? So I think the Ravens will at least be looking. I'm not sure how seriously they'll be looking, but I think they'll at least consider the possibility just because of what happens next and what the thought process is for them there. Then you have other positions. I mean, what could be next? Well, is Roquan Smith next? He's a guy we've been talking about ever since that trade request. And I think, again, I've loved Roquan Smith since his Georgia days. I think he's a phenomenal football player. But it comes down to, well, should the Ravens invest in an inside linebacker at this point? Or should it maybe be, well, let's go out there and trade for a wide receiver for the Ravens, or let's go out there and trade for an outside linebacker? I think they have the ability to make 1 or 2 splash moves. And I don't think they are hindered to say, well, only minimum guys right now. I think they can create cap space if they want to a little bit, kind of shake things up, figure out their roster. They might have room for 1 or 2 splash moves. Is that move Roquan Smith? Is that what they want? Well, what's the corner situation? I think you got to look at that as well. Jalen Armour-Davis did not play. He's missed practice. Well, he missed practice and was limited in another one. So what's the situation there? What happens if Kyle Fuller goes down? What happens if Marcus Peters has to, be on a snap count early on? They could look there. You look at a couple other positions too. Like, I think the offensive line's pretty set. Like, I know some people have mentioned, well, go out there and trade for a center or sign J.C. Treader. I think they're set right now with Patrick McCary and Tristan Colon, but that's just me. Maybe other people feel differently. Safety, they're set. Running back, they're set. Quarterback, they're set. Fullback, they're set. Tight end, they're set. So, yeah, I think for me, the positions I would look at if I'm the Ravens, if I have to give a top 4 for, like, what do they do roster-wise right now? Like, do they have to bring in an emergency veteran wide receiver? It's not a 0% possibility they do that. I think now with Tyler Wallace being injured, James Prochet being injured, they just literally might have to do it. Or they might say, you know what, we're going to ride it out with the young guys and see what they can do in bigger roles. We'll see what they do. But other positions they could look at, again, corner, outside linebacker, inside linebacker. Those are my core 4 positions for them to look at there. But the Ravens have a lot of off time here, 10 days for their next preseason game, Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals. Depending on who plays in that game, they could see Marquise Brown. A couple other former Ravens on that team as well, we will see, or could see, depending on injury situations and who plays, who doesn't. But yeah, they have time to get back to the drawing board, figure out some stuff. But it was an overall very solid first performance of the Ravens. I was very impressed with their week 1 game against Tennessee. Third down wise, I think both offense and defense did a good job. I look there. You look at the yards per carry averages, yards per catch averages, yards per attempt averages. You can look at a player like a Tyler Huntley and go to his individual stats and say, whoa, he only averaged 6.1 yards per completion. Like, that's not anything at all. Well, he got the job done. And, you have national media like saying, whoa, would Tyler Huntley be a starter here or be a starter there? And so the question becomes, like, should the Ravens start fielding calls on Tyler Huntley? I don't know if I'm there yet. I definitely want to see more of Anthony Brown or Brett Hundley before we get to that point. But, if the Ravens are offered a second rounder for Tyler Huntley, you're starting to think like, oh, maybe you make that deal, because Huntley, I think, does have value around the league. And I think his performance last night just did not hurt his value whatsoever. So that's another, like, what's next for them in terms of Could they move off of Tyler Huntley if the value's there? I think he's a very important part of this team. And obviously, if Lamar Jackson goes down, he gives this team the best chance to win. But if you feel like you have something in Anthony Brown and he continues to show, it's not just a one preseason game thing, then maybe if Seattle comes calling or someone else comes calling and says, hey, we really need a quarterback and we'll give you this for Tyler Huntley, maybe a Tyler Lockett package for Tyler. I don't know. There are possibilities, but I think Huntley is a very important part of this team. So I'm not just going to say, well, yeah, a 6th rounder and that's awesome. No, he has much more value than that. I think, again, when you want to consider options for if Lamar Jackson goes down, and hopefully, again, he does not, you have Tyler Huntley as a pretty good backup option there on that team. So, yeah, the Ravens picking up that 23-10 victory over Tennessee. We'll be doing a lot more game breakdowns. I'm excited. I'm happy that football is back. I'm excited we got to see some of these guys, Isaiah Likely showing out, Shamar Bridges showing out, a ton of guys having great performances on the day. But I'm excited to see what they do over this next week here, this next 10 days. And then, hey, they'll be back at it Sunday against the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona, a big road trip out there to Arizona, definitely. But that's all I have you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to take a 2-day break here on the show. I'm going to get back here on Monday. We'll be continuing to break down this preseason win against the Titans for the Ravens and talking about more Ravens football, of course. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you right back here on Monday.